Hello, and welcome back to Quarks and Coordinates. Today, Tyler and I will be discussing intelligence. If you enjoy listening to the show and would like to show your support, you can like, subscribe, or leave us some feedback. So, how do we define intelligence?
Well, the ability to learn and apply skills. I think it's important to note that it's not just learning the skill or even applying it, it's the combination of both.
So, you would think somebody who knows many facts, many truths about reality, but are completely incapable of using them, you wouldn't think of them as intelligent?
The typical thing is to split intelligence into book smarts versus street smarts. And people always say you can be book smart, but you'll never make it on the streets, and then vice versa. And when we try and break down what that really means, you would think book smarts means being able to learn and regurgitate facts, whereas street smarts would be how to interact with people or certain things out in the world.
Well, it sounds like you're saying it's the second half. So the book smart is the ability to learn, and the street smart is the application of skills.
Right, something like that.
I know there's some other notions of intelligence I've heard before. Some people think of intuitions as being part of intelligence. So just sort of having good, without knowing any facts or even necessarily knowing how to apply them. Some people seem to sort of know the right thing to do just intuitively without.
That makes sense to me because I feel like you can build intuitions, and intuitions aren't some intuitions are kind of given.
Some are learned, but we do have these baseline intuitions, right?
Right. Like what up is, down. We can intuit alive stuff versus dead stuff more or less. That's just hardwired into us.
Would you think of that as part of intelligence, or would you call it something separate?
Intuitions? Broadly?
The built-in intuitions, so.
The built-in intuitions.
Taking your hand off a stove, for example.
I don't think that's purely just there's no intelligence there, I don't think.
Okay, so.
Well, but that's more like reflex, not intuition, right?
Well, maybe I can abstract that a little bit more, so. The idea that the rustle in the bushes might be an entity.
Mm-hmm.
We have an intuition when we hear movement. It's a survival instinct. We hear movement and we don't see anything. We just sort of assume that it's something, an animal or another person, something like that. Would you consider that intuition intelligent?
Probably. Because the skill, well,
even though it's just as sort of built-in, reactive.
You never really learned it, right? You're just applying the intuition.
Yes, it's an adapted intuition, just as much as taking your hand off a hot stove is, really.
Well, in that case, I would say again, I don't think that's necessarily intelligence.
Okay, so it does have to be learned to some degree, even if it's like a learned intuition. It can't be just our built-in biological intuitions.
Right. So, for instance, I have a learned intuition of the basics of how special relativity works, and that seems to me a little bit closer to intelligence than my intuition of I notice a rock doesn't seem alive, but a badger does. Right. That's
yeah.
I didn't learn that, but I can definitely apply that to the real world. That doesn't seem intelligent to me.
I see. And then part of intelligence would be your ability to learn these intuitions like the one you're describing. The IQ tests are set up in a way to where it doesn't matter necessarily what you know when you take the test, but what matters more is your ability to piece things together.
Right. So I know there's a lot of stigma behind IQ tests, but what IQ tests measure specifically, they're actually really good at measuring that, which is more or less your ability to abstract. It's a well-defined thing. It doesn't measure if you're going to be successful in life or win a Nobel Prize or anything like that.
It actually is.
Well, intelligence is the best measurement but it only accounts for I think 30 or 40% of like the prediction.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I just want to clarify. It is true that your IQ won't necessarily predict how successful you will be in life, but like you followed up, it is the single most important predictor of any kind of success.
What's the biggest contribution to the prediction?
Yeah, out of everything we can pick out, intelligence seems to predict, or IQ more specifically, it seems to be the best predictor of success in any sort of environment. Even so, if you, I remember reading a study on this. I can't remember exactly where. I'll link it in the description. But if you were to do job interviews for a new sort of job, no matter what the job is, if you could only get one data point, IQ is by far the thing that's going to tell you more than experience, more than education, everything.
Because that lets you know that, like, in the instance where something new comes to the job that isn't like necessarily in the job description or something that you've been doing, if something new comes along, those with higher IQ will be able to solve that problem, whatever it may be.
I think one of the reasons it's controversial is a lot of IQ, I think, comes more or less down to luck. You know, you're either born in a certain environment, born with certain genes, and those are the things that really, at least that we can tell, affect your IQ.
Right. Well, it makes sense that it's controversial because, like, some people aren't intelligent. That's a hard fact to swallow, I guess.
Well, yeah, well, what do you do when you know that intelligence is the biggest predictor of success in your society, and you know that some people are simply just born with lower IQs?
You should structure a society that, like, helps those with the lower IQ, but it also should be structured such that those with the highest IQs are the most successful. I think that's how it should be.
I don't think
because it's not just consciousness, but also conscientiousness, like dutifulness. Those two predictors. Well, we said intelligence was the best predictor. Conscientiousness is the second best predictor. So, an intelligent, hardworking person is the person you want to be most successful in a society, right? Like those should be the people running the society, or like controlling businesses or whatnot.
Well, I don't think you have to say that we should build a society that sort of person comes to the top. It's just the fact that those people go to the top in any sort of structure we have. I think it's hard to conceive of a structure.
So it is a fact, but I also think that's how it should be. So like, it's certainly true. It's like Jeff Bezos is. I know a lot of people don't like the guy, but he's very smart. You don't become the world's richest man and like not be intelligent. That's seems to be conflicting in my mind.
It does seem, it is hard to imagine a situation where someone can accumulate that much wealth without having at least an above average IQ. I think there is an argument to be made though that while it is true that he's likely above average IQ, it's not hard to make the prediction that there are many, many, many with higher IQs that are far, far less rich than him.
Right. Well, in this particular case, we're using wealth to measure success in the scientists, for instance. The greatest scientists might not be like a millionaire, right? They might be popular because people know them, or they might have money from winning, say, the Nobel Prize or something like that.
I don't think Einstein was particularly wealthy.
Right, exactly. But he's probably
a bit more intelligent than Bezos.
Probably one of the most important people in all of physics, right? Widely considered one of the most intelligent people to at least ever live.
Well, if you think of IQ as the ability to come up with these new ideas and work in these new environments, he's pretty unprecedented.
To take it in and then apply it, right? So he had this idea of a guy falling off a roof, and then from that sprouts his theory of gravity. Like it takes intelligence to do that.
So I guess to connect this, do you think in an ideal society that Einstein should be richer than Bezos?
Not necessarily, because that a little bit aligns with interest, right? If you're just not interested in making a ton of money, but you're more interested in developing physics, but if you're really intelligent and you're interested in making money, those who are interested in making money, the most intelligent should be the ones with the most money.
I see.
And conscientious, like the intelligent ones that also work hard, right?
I know it's not really the topic we're talking about, but I mean, there is a lot of controversy over billionaires like Bezos, and a lot of people do think that
that's too much money for a person to have.
Yeah, how much wealth inequality is acceptable.
Well, it's kind of interesting because, like, if you think about it, if you tried to, it would take a lot of work to spend $1 billion in a year.
Oh yeah.
If I gave you $1 billion and I said you had 1 year to spend it, not just like donate it or something, but like actually spend it.
Buy things that I'm going to use.
Right. That's quite the task that I've given you there. Like, I'll be very surprised if at the end of the year you're broke.
I was about to say a lot of people don't understand how big $1 billion is, but truthfully, even I don't. It's just not a number our brains are really well built to understand. It's just such a huge number.
We have tricks to understanding it, right? Like 1 million seconds is like a week and a half, whereas like 1 billion seconds is 30 years.
Yeah,
more or less.
I've seen a demonstration where you write out 1 billion in terms of like thousands or 10,000s, and then you spend 1 million of it, you delete the 10,000s, and you scroll away, and you can't find the gap anywhere.
Right, exactly. Like there's no way.
It's just lost in the sea.
That has to do with like magnitudes and stuff.
Yeah, and
1 billion is 3 orders of magnitudes higher than a million.
But do you think simply being intelligent and conscientious justifies having billions and billions? Where would you draw the line? If at all.
Well, it seems to me I'm okay with like tying wealth to how much you've helped society. And this seems kind of weird saying that Jeff Bezos like has helped society, but like
certainly
he really, I mean, Amazon is like everybody uses Amazon, right?
He revolutionized online shopping, and
right. And that's like, I know people hate on the guy, but like that's an insane thing to do, and it makes sense to me that he has the amount of money he does.
Well,
because of how crazy what he did.
Surely you would admit that he hasn't contributed as much to society as Einstein, to go back to that example.
I don't know, like.
Or do you think that's a trickier calculation to make than I'm presenting it?
Sure, without Einstein, we wouldn't have GPS, which would make Amazon harder. We're always building on people of the past. Like Einstein, I'm not sure that Einstein would have came up with special relativity if, say, Lorentz before him hadn't come up with the Lorentz factor that we use and stuff like that.
Well, Lorentz in his day, do you think he should have been as rich or richer than Jeff Bezos, you know? Or do you think he contributed in his day an equivalent amount to what Jeff Bezos has contributed today?
Well, it's like hard to say, right? Because what he contributed to gives us like our theory of gravity and special relativity, which is used in all of physics.
Right.
You give that credit to Lorentz for developing some of the basic mathematics, or do you give that credit to people like Einstein who took that basic mathematics and developed it into like full-fledged theories?
Well,
it seems like a hard thing to measure.
I get where you're saying it's hard to measure. It's hard to really say which one's better. But surely Jeff Bezos' contribution can't be a few orders of magnitude more than, say, Einstein's contribution. That's surely not even in the question, right?
Right. So I think if Einstein had went on a campaign saying, I've given you guys this amazing theory, I want to be compensated for this. If he pursued that, I don't think I would be necessarily mad at him for that. I just don't think it was it's not what he wanted to do. Yeah. He didn't want to become a billionaire.
Yeah, I think it is tricky. It's clear that some amount of wealth inequality isn't good, There has to be some line where one person just
Right.
simply has too much. And I'm sure that someone like Bezos is probably over that line. But I do agree with you that it's not as clear cut as some people imagine it to be, I think.
Right. So it's easy to think that he has too much money, and I'll accept that argument. That seems fine to me. 200 billion, I don't know what it is, but it seems to fluctuate by tens of billions every week.
Yeah.
Like, having that much money, he literally can't spend that much money. So does he need that much money? That's kind of...
I think from just looking at it as someone who's more of like a utilitarian sort of approach, I'd like taking some of that wealth and having philosophers distribute it,
Right.
Curing...
That's always the problem. Distributing the money from the top and like
that is really hard.
blowing it down, that's like one of the problems of the modern age.
Yeah.
Like, there is so much money in like very few hands.
It's easy to say that we should take 100 billion of Jeff Bezos's money and spend it on feeding those in poverty. It's easy to say that,
or developing schools,
or whatever. Yeah,
right.
But it's really hard to actually carry that out,
organize that
in a way to where it's going to work and not be abused. But we went a little bit off the rails on there. But
I want to point out one other thing, and it's what's called the Pareto distribution. It's hard for me to describe it exactly, but I give you some examples of what the Pareto distribution tells us. Say, for instance, if we're looking at the size of stars in the universe, the very, very biggest stars in the universe, there's a very small number of those. And then as you go down in mass, the top 10 heaviest stars have 80% more mass than the bottom 50% of stars. So this seems to be like a theme just in the universe itself. If you look at forests, for instance, there's only a very few trees that are way above everyone else. If you look at like the mass of our solar system, all the mass is in the sun rather than all the planets. The same thing with money in the economy. The money, it always ends up, and this has been in all of human history, that very few of the people have a majority of the wealth. And so I don't think it's necessarily right to blame or like hate on or something like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk because they have so much money. In that perspective, it seems like that's just like it would happen anyways.
Oh yeah. He is simply a person following his own incentives in a system that is built in this way. There's nothing particularly evil about doing that, I don't think.
Right. But it's easy to... We think of like...
But my main problem with
corrupts absolutely
mentioning that... Well, I guess it's just important to make clear that while that does give reason to sort of understand why it's happened, of course, it would be the naturalistic fallacy for anyone to hear that and think, well, that's how it should be. Because the stars are like that, and because...
Right. But what I'm trying to point out, like, if that's a law of the universe, what do you do?
Well,
like, can you change that is the first question.
Well, so due to things like entropy, it's sort of a law of the universe that everything comes to an end to some degree. But we still should fight that, I think. We're going to inevitably age and wither away and so on and so forth, but I still think we're justified in trying to prevent it, even if it's the natural way.
Trying to, sure, but like, can we?
That's a really... We might not ever be able to solve the problem of wealth inequality, but we can still make our best efforts.
We can shorten the gap, right? Like, we can have the richest people having, I don't know, tens of billions of dollars or like billions of dollars, and like the poorest people not having zero, more or less.
I think it's important to just keep bouncing back. If you think back in the 1920s, the wealth inequality gap was larger than it is now. Someone like Rockefeller, I believe, is proportionally much richer than someone like Bezos.
About 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. So if you think about it, but we made laws against monopolies, we fought against that, and we kind of rubber banded it, pulled it, and now it's starting to spread again. I think it's just a useful endeavor to try to keep pulling it back.
Well, you also have to, because in those situations where like the inequality gets too great, the whole system, it'll collapse, and then essentially all the money will like spread out everywhere. And that seems perhaps like a good thing, but in my view, that would be if we took like all of the money in the world and distributed it evenly just amongst the population, however you could do that. That to me doesn't seem like a good solution. It would, I don't know what the consequences of that would be, but I can't imagine it would be good. And then you would inevitably end up with some people having most of the money anyways.
Yeah, it would always go back. I don't know if I agree that would necessarily be bad. I can't think of a more egalitarian approach, but you're certainly bordering on communism. It seems
hard to like do that thought experiment. Like, what if everybody had equal money, or we distributed all the money equally throughout the planet?
Well, not that I'm a communist, but to steelman communism, it's basically this idea, except you distribute it equally according to people's needs and according to their abilities. So people with more abilities get a little bit more, people with more needs get a little bit more.
Okay. But like those with the best ability aren't a billion times more valuable than those who don't really contribute to society.
Yeah, I mean, the difference would be you would never have someone who's 1,000 times more valuable than someone else right now.
Well, like if you think of like the total wealth, Jeff Bezos he has a very teeny tiny percentage of the total wealth, but is whatever percentage he has too big, I guess is the question.
Yeah, well, when you're spread it over 7 billion-ish people, I think probably, but
right. So, for instance, if he did give out all $200 billion of his wealth, that's 200 divided by 7, like people are getting $30 a piece or something like that. Is that how that works?
Well, you don't give it to everyone. You give it to those who need it most, you know?
Right.
So,
but like giving a ton to people like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk because they're able to invest it better.
I get that argument for sure. I think it's almost undeniably true that there exists people that we can know with reasonable certainty can spend portions of that money better than Bezos can in ways that will benefit society more. I think that's pretty much I'd have a hard time being convinced otherwise of that.
You don't. So I know. So I want to talk about Elon Musk instead of Bezos.
Okay, sure.
I feel like he is one of the most qualified people for spending money.
He's clearly very intelligent, and he's made some really good innovations, and he's certainly one of those people who has a great ability and deserves more money, but to the extent that he has it, I'm not sure. It's hard to imagine one single person being able to utilize all that purchasing power to its maximum effectiveness. It's just, we're just so limited as being individuals, I think.
Yeah.
Even someone as capable as Elon Musk.
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
It seems like how do you even like solve that though?
I don't know. I mean, I can come up with ideas, but none of them are practical, so right. Maybe when AI takes over, we'll have no choice.
They're just going to spend however they see fit.
Yeah.
And then debate amongst themselves.
Well, let's actually move into that. That was an interesting tangent. Let's talk about AI, because I think this might be the solution, and this will actually tie in a lot with the wealth inequality, I think. So I know you're a little bit more, I think you're a little more skeptical on this than I am. I'm just going to present this to you again, and you can tell me what you think. So Intelligence, as we've talked about it, the ability to learn and apply skills, is simply a matter of processing information we take in from our sensory experience, exchanging information between neurons with electrical connections in our brain, and then spitting it back out into mechanical processes to apply them. So our machines are already able to do a lot of these things independently, especially not necessarily all of them perfectly, but we have machines that can learn. We have machines that can take in sensories and react in certain ways. And it seems to me that it is simply a matter of time. It's a question of when, not if, that we one day have a system that has a general intelligence as sophisticated as ours and has the ability to improve itself. The computer does it about 1 million times faster than we do it. So once you have a system that is just as capable as a person in doing this sort of intelligent process, any time they spend on any task will be 1 million times more effective than anything a human does. First, do you have any problems with any of that?
Well, the first thing would be you're talking about like the speed in which the information is being processed. I'm not so sure. So if you follow the current through the circuit or whatever, the current is quote unquote faster than the current in our brain. But I don't necessarily think that means that it's like better processing, right? Ours could be going slower because there's like intermediate steps between that is very important. And then it seems slower. And then, you see what I mean?
What intermediate processes would you be talking about?
Oh, I have no idea. But like it doesn't seem clear to me that like just because the electricity flowing is quicker means their computational ability is like better or something like that.
Well, we already know that. I mean, you can plug in equations into your computer and have it spit it back out to you millions of times faster than you could possibly calculate them.
Well, the problem is like a computer is more or less like a glorified adding machine, and our brains are not adding machines at all.
Right. Well, all we're talking about with AI, though,
that's not what we do,
is a combination of these machines in a way that work together in a way that simulates what we do. And I don't see any reason to think that its ability to decide to do this or that is necessarily going to be constrained any more than its ability to add numbers 1 million times faster. I guess I don't see anything particularly compelling about running electricity through meat that makes it significantly different.
So I definitely think like intelligence doesn't require, for instance, like Google's DeepMind is clearly intelligent. I think that's not even a controversial point.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Well, that's actually a good point on this sort of speed question. You know, human beings have been playing chess for.
But on the chess point though, like chess is more or less addition. It doesn't require.
Well, to some degree, but it has decision making. It's not pure addition. You simply can't add up all of the numbers. The numbers are too large even for a computer to calculate all the moves. You have to stop to some degree. So chess is a good one. So chess has been around for 1,500 years. We've been playing it for that long. In the last 50 or so years, we've had computers that can play it. Our best computers to this day typically calculate maybe 30 moves in every single branch that's possible. So they can't calculate to the very end of the game on every move. It's simply too large of a number.
We think of like calculating moves per second. So like stockfish can do something like 80 million moves per second.
Yeah. So
that's what it can calculate.
Yeah, and that's a calculator. So that's still not really what we're talking about with intelligence.
And then Google's DeepMind does like 2 orders of magnitude less calculations, but still beats it.
Yeah, exactly. So our best chess computer after decades of research got beat by Google DeepMind, who only had the rules of chess. And it played itself for 9 hours, and it was able to overcome Stockfish, which is our best chess calculator.
So from that, it seems to me the argument can be made that like intelligence isn't necessarily computation. There's something else happening there.
No, but whatever else is going on there, the computers certainly can do it more effectively than us. If you think about how we play chess, our calculators play chess, and how artificial intelligence is able to teach itself chess and play it.
Right. So I see what you're saying. So like the computer can learn chess, right? But like people can learn chess and also be a car mechanic and can also play guitar, and then like they're also a teacher, and
But surely you have to admit
sure
that
they're able to beat us on that one thing.
at some point, DeepMind, it's going to be able to play. It plays chess. It can play StarCraft. It's going to be able to play every game you can imagine. It's going to learn how to to fix a car.
Well, in my mind, see, like all those games are just like adding problems, more or less. That's why it's so much better at it than us.
I mean, StarCraft. You think it's an adding game?
Yeah. Isn't it though? Like, do you have more value than the other guy? Did you place better than the other guy? Like, did you spend your money more efficiently than the other guy?
Some degree, but you also are dealing with hidden information, hidden map space, and things like that require complex decision making that isn't mathematical. Or if you break that down to being mathematical, then I would say all of our decision making is mathematical.
Well, it's tricky because like it seems as if our universe is described by mathematics.
Yeah. Well, then I don't see the particular point. So, do you think AI will never be able to be a car mechanic?
My point is that Stockfish seems to be more or less a calculator.
Sure.
Stockfish being the like more or less the best chess
calculator
that we had before Google did its self-learning thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like there's any intelligence in Stockfish, but it seems like there's intelligence in DeepMind.
For sure.
That's what I'm trying to say. Like from that, intelligence to me cannot simply be like computation. Like there's
simply computation.
There's something else there.
But the computers can do it a lot better than we can in the places that we've been able to integrate them.
Right.
And
well, that's such a like specific thing.
But my only claim is that it's simply a matter of time. It's not a matter of if. An AI could conceivably be able to do everything we care about.
Right. Well, I'm also of the mind that like you need to like be in the world. You can't like we are like located. This isn't the great terminology, but like we're in our bodies or we are our bodies. We need the body, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think in order to like have influence or in order to interact with the world meaningfully, you have to like be in the world. And like if you just let Google Mine be all over the internet, which is like spread out all over the planet, it seems like there's something missing there to me.
Well, you can run DeepMind. For example, the StarCraft one, I know they run that on just like a computer with a pretty robust graphics card. It's not a big network necessarily. Once it's done the learning anyway. So it does a learning over the Google Cloud servers, which maybe 11, 12 high-power computers equivalent. But once it's done the learning process, it can easily be put on a single machine. And your problem is that it just needs a body. I mean, that's not hard to do.
So you have the specific program that's able to run chess. Sure. What else can it do?
Okay, but so once I have one that runs
now give it a checkers
chess,
game.
once that I have
you're
one
just gonna destroy
that is a mechanic, once I have one that can write beautiful music, it's simply, my only point is that's a matter of time before AI can do all of this.
So if I see a computer that is like even something like music, if you know the wavelengths that tie to pleasure of sound, for instance, it seems like you could just formulaically make music.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily require like intelligence.
Well, you're learning the principles of music and then applying those skills to make music.
Right.
How's that
Well,
not intelligence?
thinking of the algorithms where we feed them 1,000 songs that sound similar from the same genre, and then like they construct music from that.
Well, that isn't what AI would do. AI would be able to do exactly what we do.
Given just A B C D E F G.
Yeah, knowing the notes, knowing music theory, knowing what sort of chords go to.
If it created music, would it be music like that we enjoy? Would it be music that it enjoys, or is that even a valid question?
It just depends on the music piece they come out. Everything that I've done to learn how to do music, I see no reason an AI couldn't do that. I see no reason an AI couldn't learn all the chords, see what sort of sounds work well or not.
Well, I
well
think
together.
a little bit like AI might be a bit of a misnomer. It's like there's intelligence.
General intelligence is the
End of
thing we're
story.
really talking about.
And we say artificial because
We made it.
Humans made it. But like if a system is intelligent, the system is intelligent. It's not like artificially intelligent. That doesn't even make sense.
No, it's just to
really.
separate it from natural intelligence that came around through natural processes like human beings.
Like I'm not moved by that.
Oh, it's not an important distinction. Okay. Well, do you at least accept that eventually we will have general intelligence that can do everything we can do? Much better than we can do.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't want to say yes or no to that. It seems hard.
Where do you think we would
all.
get stopped? Do you think technology is going to stop improving?
Perhaps.
How?
What if technology destroys us?
Okay, well, that's true that if there's an apocalypse and everything ends, then yes, of course.
Well, what if the nature of technology is that it destroys? Like, what if that's like the end goal? We just don't know it.
Well, if I were to predict any kind of technology that does have that effect, I think AI is actually near the top of the list.
And I also think whenever you're thinking about life in general, it seems like we're creating the next life. So from the past, life hasn't destroyed the things in the past. It's built on top of it, right? We're built from millions or even billions of years of like continuous processes, and like general artificial intelligence is just going to continue to build from us more or less. But I don't think it's like going to like destroy us or
I don't think
make us obsolete in some weird way like that.
I'm not thinking like a Terminator or Matrix style computer Skynet goes evil and exterminates humanity. I'm just thinking of it.
Well, it seems to me it'll be like a global phenomenon. That's what it seems to me.
If you just consider the difference in intelligence between us and something relatively close to us like a chimpanzee, it seems like there's a big gap there. Or let's go to something a lot less intelligent to us, like an ant, maybe. We can't talk to the ant. It can't talk to us. It has no idea what we do. We don't care too much about them, except if they get in our way, we might kill them. This is an example from someone else. If you imagine you see an anthill in the grass, you might go out of your way to step over it. But if you're going to build a building there, you won't think twice about just completely obliterating it. And the ants will have no idea what's going on. And I think it's very possible we get to a situation where AI, which once it's able to improve itself, will be able to improve itself at a rate that is just truly incomprehensible to us. If it continues at the speed that something like DeepMind improves, you could leave it alone in a room for a week, and it will accomplish 50,000 years worth of human equivalent activity. And if you're thinking about an intelligent machine that's doing something like that.
Well, so like this is like I think we're probably getting to the root of my concern, or it's like if you have like a supercomputer and a black box that is just supercomputing just whatever, what is it like? It could just supercompute and do all its computations, but like, will it affect the world?
Well, I'm not talking about in a black
the
box.
world without a body?
I'm talking, well, if you have an AI and a computer connected to the internet, it could very well get its own body.
Sure. So like, okay, so let's imagine there is a super intelligence in the internet right now.
Okay.
Like controlling the internet.
Sure.
And the worst thing it could do would be like delete everyone's money, shut off everyone's computers,
Fire
and
all the
like just
nukes.
shut down the. Yeah. Let's not assume that the nukes are attached to this, because you think about it, like if it destroyed all the nukes, it would destroy itself. So it wouldn't want to do something like that.
Hey, people.
Perhaps.
No, I'm not saying it would. I don't think that will happen. That seems really illogical to me. But I'm just saying there is a lot of power there. I mean, if it was invisible on the internet, it could pay people to build itself a body. It could do all sorts of things. It could impersonate anyone. It could have any amount of money.
Right, but once you have like a body, say like we do or something.
I don't think it would need a body like we do, but it could
like
get one if it needed it.
Limits its power.
No, it could still be fully integrated with the internet.
Well, I have another question. Like, we could be like, so we're like made up of cells, right?
Yeah.
What if we are just like the cells of like a bigger intelligence spread out over the world?
It's very possible.
So
you could look at it that way.
People interact with each other all the time. Information processing,
sure.
Like between me and you, between you and your students, or you and your audience, me and my tutors, or whoever. Yeah. But like all the millions and billions of combinations of these interactions, like, is humanity as a whole, is there like some higher level emergent intelligence there that we even in principle can't be aware of because we're just the individual units of
that's very possible.
If that's the case, then like that super intelligence is like already here.
You could think of us as a super intelligence. You could think of us as cyborgs because we're integrated with our phones and the internet with our knowledge processing.
Well, I'm saying like humanity as a whole.
You could
is
look at it
differently
that way.
Intelligent. Humanity as a whole is differently intelligent than individual humans.
No, yeah, I agree. And especially if you're talking about intelligence as the ability to learn and apply skills, we can do that as collectives. So yeah, of course. You could look at entire countries as being intelligent and having wills of sorts. You could talk about the whole Earth. Yeah.
Right.
Now that the Earth is all connected.
I think the point I reject is that AI are going to become so intelligent that we become obsolete, and then use the ant analogy. We'll be more or less ants to them. I think I reject that part.
Why?
I don't think they're going to be just like, it just doesn't make sense to me that it seems like life builds on itself. It doesn't like build on itself and then like make obsolete what came for it.
That happens all the time.
It's just like a
99% of all the species that have ever came about are extinct right now.
Right.
And the new life,
but it's like
is built on the death of the old life.
Yeah, but it's not like we destroyed that. It's just like we built on top of it, and then the other things just like...
No, we don't go out of our way to destroy anthills. I don't think AI would go out of its way to destroy us. But the second it has its own motives, there's just no telling. Once we build something that is, as far as intelligence go, indistinguishable from what a human does, but to a huge degree more rapid, there's just no telling what happens. It might be good, it might not be bad, but whatever it will happen, it will be crazy.
Right.
At the very least, all human work will probably become completely unnecessary.
Is it necessary now?
I think, yeah. There's some things that are necessary now for civilization to go on. But if you imagine an AI coming around that has general intelligence and can do everything we can do, we could have it automate. Well, we might not necessarily be in control of it, but provided everything goes perfectly and we do have control over it, we could automate every job there is, and we could do whatever the heck we want.
So I think in my view, whatever this next great general intelligence that seems to be sprouting from our technology, I think we'll be integrated with it. I don't think it will like replace us.
That is one possibility that we can integrate successfully with it, but there's just once it happens, once the genie's out of the bottle, we can't put it back. So you have to kind of hope.
How do we know if the genie isn't already out of the bottle?
I mean, it could be, and we just don't know. It's possible, but it doesn't seem to be that way yet. But there's no.
What do you think would be some of the things that seemed like, oh god, like we can't turn around at this point? What would be some of the, what would you be looking out for? Do you think
it's
just speculation?
I would think technology that appears to be magic. So just
that's most technology,
right? But to a degree that human beings can
like
explain.
My iPad seems like magic.
Yeah, of course. But to even greater degrees that can't be explained by things we know right now. Things that manipulate the laws of physics in ways that we don't possibly understand.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, you want just like a idea? I mean...
Well, I mean, like, what do you mean by manipulating? Like, you can't change this constant of gravity, for instance.
Well, what if you saw something that was changing the constant of gravity?
That would be strange.
That would be really strange.
Well, I'm talking not the constant of gravity, for instance, is like we use pi, for instance, the number pi. You can't change that.
So, yeah, but there might be a deeper level of understanding that we don't get that makes that a little bit different. So if you imagine if you were operating around the constants that we understood about 1,000 years ago, you'd get some things right, but other things you would get quite wrong, and you would really...
But the constants haven't changed. We've just built on them.
Yeah, but built on them on...
The number E, the number pi, they've stayed the same. Newton's gravitational constant G has stayed the same.
Of course, but you could show Newton things that we've discovered today, and he would be very confused.
For a little bit. I could get it.
Right. Okay. That's in like 1,000 years. Less. That's a few hundred years.
Right.
Imagine an AI which is working on the scales of hundreds of thousands of years. It's going to come up with stuff that we just, there's just no way we can fathom them.
Right.
We will be like ants. So I guess what I would expect are things that ants experience and can't possibly understand. I just feel we'd be completely dumbfounded by whatever happened. Provided it happens without us knowing about it.
Would it be understandable at all?
I don't know. I don't think so.
So, like, for instance, you said, like, if we tried to tell Newton about, like, GR, quantum mechanics, he would 100% be confused, but, like, you could teach it to him.
You could teach it to him. He would get it eventually.
Would we be able to be taught the physics that a super AI did?
Well, let's just keep rewinding back. I think probably not. I think it's impossible. Because if you keep rewinding the clock, like, what if you tried to explain general relativity to some of the first human beings? And then what if you go back to before that?
We had to build on it, right? That's the thing. Well, that's getting back to, like, what I was saying earlier. Like, life builds on itself. It doesn't, like, do something and then, like, make obsolete the thing before it.
When there's general intelligence and when it can make improvements to itself, I think it will improve itself at a rate that is so fast that explaining the things it understands to us will be like us explaining general relativity to a dog.
Okay. I think, okay. Perhaps. It just seems like, well, there are literal physical limits on how fast you can learn.
Of course, but I don't think humans come anywhere close to the peak of that.
Can you, in theory, have a computer the size of a planet? I don't even know if that's possible in principle.
I don't think so. I don't think you could, but you don't need that. To best a human, you don't need a very large computer at all.
Well, sure, to best... But, like, what do you need to best humanity?
Well, certainly a much smaller computer than the Earth. I mean, you already, on a single computer with a decent graphics card, you can run an AI in StarCraft that beats the best StarCraft players.
But no AI has written a Shakespeare yet.
No. But once we have an AI that can improve itself, a general intelligence that can improve itself like a human can improve itself, this AI will be able to build more AI. and make improvements at a rate that is so much faster by the same way we do it, because it will
it will create, like, this is the point I'm trying to get to. Like, if we have a set of servers that's like doing a ton of computations, that server can't like go build more servers.
It can.
Do you see what
Why
I'm saying?
can't it?
But how? But it has no body in the world. That's why it can't.
It can. It could make a body. It doesn't need to, though. It could just it could just have humans do it for them. I mean,
that's the point. There's definitely a gap between how we're thinking about this. I can't quite get to it. I don't know if it's just like,
well,
I really like humanity, and so I'm uber super biased, and you've been able to take away some of that bias, or
which premise?
Something deeper than that.
Which premise do you not accept? Do you not accept that intelligence is information processing, learning and applying skills through information processing? The second premise: technology will continue to improve.
That's the premise that I don't think that's a given.
I think, given we don't obliterate ourselves.
It seems like, so over the last few hundred years, it's been improving quite rapidly.
Insanely fast. But it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to improve rapidly to even get to this point. It just has to keep going.
Right. Well, even so, that is the premise I have question with, because, like I said earlier, what if technology is such that it like destroys itself?
Yeah. I get that.
And it's just like inherent in the system itself, and like you can't avoid it.
Like eventually we just accidentally make a black hole or something.
Something like, or even something weirder that we can't even imagine.
Okay, yeah.
I don't think it's given that technology will continually improve.
I'll grant you that's a possibility. But if you just so what if that doesn't happen? What if technology doesn't?
Given those premises, sure. I just don't think they're given.
Okay. Well, but you think it's probable that technology, more probable at least, that technology probably just obliterates itself at some point?
I don't know. That's the problem.
But you think it's a worthy enough contention that you're not very convinced?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Like, it could very well be. Like,
well, if I take that away, if I just say...
we could make something so dangerous... nukes, for instance. Yeah. Like, that is the most dangerous thing we've ever made in existence, and we have tens of thousands of those.
And it was great empirical evidence of our understanding of physics.
Right, and at least for its time, that was peak technology. They were literally playing on a bleeding edge, and I can easily imagine that something could be more dangerous than a nuke.
Before AI, but not AI?
That is... or perhaps it is AI. Perhaps like the AI is just like, it's dangerous not only to humanity but like itself and like everything around it. Or that's what I'm trying to. I don't want to make like any claims, but it just.
But if I just say, I get that objection. So if I take away that objection, if I just say, okay, I can tell you factually that technology will not destroy itself, and technology will. And is there any other problem you have with those two premises other than that? Or is that the only
I have
objection?
A little bit of problem with the limit of computation. We imagine that what a computer can do in a weekend would be 10,000 years of technological advance of humans, for instance. One of the problems I have is, first of all, we don't know what humans can develop in 10,000 years.
Well, we do. Humans have been around for 10,000 years.
Well, if we look at 10,000 years ago compared to today, it seems to me literally impossible that a computer could do that over the course of a week. There are fundamental limits to like computation.
There are some different... The analogies I'm using with the timescales can be a little bit misleading, but they're still kind of factual. And I can...
Right, so certainly they can compute faster.
I can give this to you by analogy of how they trained the StarCraft machine. So they trained their StarCraft machine for a week. And I believe for this particular process, it was the equivalent of 200 years of StarCraft in this week of training.
Meaning
it played...
The computer played continuously for
200 years worth of games. They run the game in a binary, so they just run the game as numbers, basically. They don't actually see the screen when they're doing the training. They're just running the numbers, and then they can play the game later. So they're able to run those numbers much faster than you sit there and play through each game over and over again. So the equivalent was 200 years worth of games that they played against itself.
Sure. And in 200 years, they beat the best pros who have been playing for 10.
Yeah, right. So
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I say 200 years, but it's a week.
Right.
So
right.
Yeah, it took them maybe 10 years to learn how to move their workers properly, you know. And looking at it on the scale is a little bit weird. They learn in a very different way. But the fact is, they did 200 years worth of learning, even though it was not as good as the 10 years of it crushed the 10 years of the pros. 200 is a lot more than 10, but they do that 200 in a week. So the main matter of the fact is they're just so much faster than we are.
So I see what you're saying, and it makes sense. But can a general intelligence learn generally just anything about the universe at that kind of speed? Sure, it can specifically learn chess or specifically learn StarCraft or stuff like that, but can it come up with just physics at that extraordinary rate? That's another one of my contentions.
I think it's just undeniable that whatever it is, it's going to be a lot faster than us, and it's going to be able to do what we do. That much,
it will be insane.
I think is pretty much. But maybe we can just leave it to the viewers to tell us what they think. I do think you raised some good objections.
It's tricky getting to the bottom of those objections, right? Because
I mean, I think.
You see where I'm coming from a little bit better, though?
I'm fairly convinced that we will have general AI one day. But
Sure, I'll grant
if I were to guess the second option, it would be that we destroy ourselves before we get there.
Right. You see, that's the thing. I'm pretty agnostic on that. I don't it seems so hard to predict that. The future is open, so it's
And to steelman your point on that, there is the Fermi paradox, the idea that there should be life all around us, but there isn't, and one of those things might be the inevitability of technology destroying itself. So that's not empirical evidence, but that's a reason to believe.
Perhaps think of something like this. Something becomes so intelligent that it doesn't want to go out. It just wants to
I have everything here.
And it's and it hunkers down and is intelligent until the heat death of the universe. What if that's
maybe
the end goal of intelligence? The super uber most intelligent, even theoretical possible thing perhaps doesn't even want to go out. Right?
Yeah, of course.
Perhaps it just wants to think, and that it's satisfied with that. And this is getting to my point. I'm a little hesitant in saying that general artificial intelligence will make us obsolete. It seems so ridiculously hard to predict something like that. That's why I stay pretty agnostic on that.
It's possible also that we integrate with them appropriately. You mentioned Elon Musk earlier. That is one of his projects with Neuralink.
Neuralink.
Yeah, he's trying to get humans ready for AI in a way.
Right. I think it's more likely that we'll be integrated into the next thing, whatever it is, rather than the next thing existing and then making us obsolete, backwardsly. I think we'll just as the timeline goes, we'll just get more and more integrated into it, and then it'll be hard to distinguish us from the thing.
I mostly agree with that, but I think that before we get integrated enough, I think it's likely that there's just a boom. The general intelligence happens, and at that point, it's just way out of our control. But it's really interesting. We can leave it to the people listening, and they can tell us what they think about the various objections you brought, what they think about AI and intelligence in general. We talked a lot about wealth inequality and stuff, which was
not quite on topic, but it's fun to think about.
Well, I think so. If the AI does happen, it will create a wealth inequality unlike anything we've ever seen if we don't make adjustments very quick to control for it.
Right. That's a definite fear I could see being legitimate.
But I do have faith in humanity, and I do think if that's our problem, we can take it.
like going way back to the beginning, we were saying like intelligence is a predictor of success. Like if we imagine something that is 10 million times more intelligent than like humanity combined, like that kind of inequality would be like they would own the sun while we would own
Right.
the universe.
or even just an artificial intelligence, a general intelligence who's under the control of a human being who uses that intelligence to make their own wealth inequality is another very much so
Right.
possibility. Any final thoughts on that?
In a later podcast, we can try and tie intelligence into consciousness. I know we didn't touch on that, but as a little sneak peek.
Yeah.
Sneak peek.
So if the AI does come
Say again.
around, is it conscious?
That's the question.
Yeah.
That's the cliffhanger.
Okay, we'll see you guys next time.
Later.
Good.